Going into round number 4 of the Aquamarine Cup. Excellent. For this round, we have Quebec Check, we have Bob 301, Mr. Meltimus, and Major Cyrus. We have an electronics colony with a lot of low prices, only high water. So what does this all mean? It means you're mildly disincentivized to go for nomads, since this electronics price will be just rising continuously. Might be difficult for you to keep up with the cost of upgrading. Oof, that D found is not what you're looking for. So this isn't a very good found for starters, just, in the middle of nowhere. No good access to resources, and for that amount of debt, there's no way to make enough money to overcome that, to pay down some of the debt before interest consumes you. Major Cyrus is just going to be out of this game pretty quickly, which is unfortunate. Mr. Meltimus, on the other hand, going for decent carbon. It's what I would call barely adequate. You can get a full triangle, that is something. There are core samples if you really want to gamble on finding better carbon. And it'll definitely do, but it's not a great feeling to have to spend 3 claims on carbon throughout the game. You don't have an abundance of claims, so it's just going to slow you down a bunch. Back check going for this elite. Okay, I can see it. Would like to see a little more iron production here. 1 low iron's not going to be enough to sustain the steel. He's going to need to produce a lot of steel. Going for double water, double silicon is aggressive. Silicon I can buy a bit more just because he's going to need it to upgrade, and the price was high, but water, the price was high, but he doesn't need it to upgrade. So the price should crash out before too long, and then he won't be able to do anything with these 2 claims until he gets to the HQ3 upgrade. Which, to be fair, is going to be pretty cheap. Steel starting half, glass starting half. Should be easy enough to buy that up. Still though, I don't know, maybe that's fine. Bob here going for 2 high silicon tiles instead of the adjacent tiles. No real reason for that. High plus adjacent low produces 4.5 silicon per second. 2 separate highs only produces 4. This also means he's shipping a little bit. Again, not stuff that's necessary. Use your adjacency. The other thing that's going on here is that he has found it in 2 locations with very little room for him to build. We'll see how he works around that. Major Cyrus continues to be dead because of his found. Meltimus has gotten to HQ3 first. Second. Moving into more water, moving into farms, should all be quite nice. Geotherm will help keep his debt in check, but power is relatively weak, so it's not going to do anything too interesting. I'm moving into some carbon on top of everything. Carbon is low, it's unlikely to go anywhere crazy either, so gonna be a bit of a dead claim. He is a nomad though, so he's able to return claims, put them to use as something more effective. We'll see if he takes that option. Meanwhile, Quebec Check over here has moved into reactors on HQ3 and a 3rd steel mill. Still only operating on the 1 low iron tile though, so it's not going to be too long before these 2 prices even out. And no one else is available this game to help subsidize the steel production. No one is producing iron, which just means that it's going to be in a real awkward position with all this. Should still be fine. Reactors are making a ton of money. Still reasonably cheap for him to upgrade. So I should get to HQ4, be able to move into that extra iron. But it is all just slowing him down a little more than is necessary. Mr. Meltimus going for a quick patent lab again. Can definitely afford it. Again, with the glass cheap means that he has more money to play with, and all this money coming in from life sport does mean, especially with cheap chems, that some research is not prohibitively expensive. On the other hand, he has covered up his carbon with this patent lab and these reactors, so especially because he has no carbon stockpile, upgrading to HQ4 is going to be somewhat more difficult for him. Even if he gets that done, he'll need to build stuff after upgrading, and that will be quite expensive after having bought 360 carbon for the upgrade. Always got to be a bit careful about transitioning completely out of your upgrade resources and your construction resources before you build up the stockpiles of them. One thing that could definitely help is nanotech there. Just getting those resources back when he scraps out of the building makes that rotation that he will have to make sooner or later less painful. Quebec has managed to upgrade to HQ level 4. It's going straight for this pleasure dome, which is going to be an excellent building. Cheap chems again, and elite pleasure domes always quite good. The mix of other colonies isn't spectacular, but Scavenger is alright, Nomad is okay, Scientific is whatever. Well, Scientific is actually kind of bad right now since it's gonna be stuck on HQ1 for a while. But you know, it's fine. Still gonna be making a healthy $400 a second. Elite pleasure domes, man. They're insane. 36k for this other pleasure dome tile. It's definitely defensible. $228 right now is quite solid. It'll drop down to, what, 150 or so after this pleasure dome completes? Yeah. But that's still quite good. 160-ish now. And if it ever needs to be transitioned, it can become an optimization center pretty easily. Although likely it never will be, because you do want to contest this pleasure dome market when the elite is in it. Okay, Quebec's steel mills are auto off now. Something we were talking about earlier. Never picked up that second iron tile, so this was just going to happen at some point. Bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. Quebec definitely wants to look into, well, more iron, but right now he does have the extra claim for the extra iron tile even, so that would just be nice. Other things he might be thinking about, optimization centers into food and other things would be great. And just could even transition the silicon into food. Talked about before about how you need to be careful about moving out of your upgrade resources, but at this point he has 900 silicon. Never going to, well, not never, it's not going to burn through that anytime soon. So this means that these two tiles can be recovered for something like food production without any real downside. Other things that have been going on this game, Mr. Meltness made a half-hearted small push into Quebec. Quebec's never going to be really threatened by a majority buy as the elite. You have the 4 stocks already, it's very easy to pick up the 5th. Instead, what Bob was doing, picking up Major Ceres, could be potentially interesting. It's definitely not going to produce income at any point, like within the next eternity. Okay, it's making $1, $6 I guess total. But yeah, it's not a good investment in that sense, but it has raised the stock price significantly, and it cost very little, probably on the order of 30k, 20k, I don't know. It is still questionable whether Bob might have wanted to upgrade beforehand, before going into that, but he's still doing alright. Definitely want to see him back in more silicon soon. He only has 50 stockpiled, even though the price is reasonable now. Again, once he wants to look into upgrading, once he puts down the rest of his buildings, it's going to start looking a lot less reasonable. 8K financial instruments auction is alright. We have people in not a ton of debt across the board. Mr. Meltmus is the deepest in debt of any of the players. So picking it up for him might end up functioning as a sort of defensive-ish thing. But yeah, Mr. Meltmus again picking up. I don't know what you're talking about. Picking up a patent lab and going for teleportation. That is all just fine. Definitely do have to wonder in his case in particular whether teleportation was necessary. He is a bit short on tiles, so it's helpful, but for the most part, this all could have been connected up. It's not really a necessity, and probably not something I would have wanted to push for on HQ3. Even though it's fairly cheap, like none of these things were doing a lot to help him make more money. None of them were really key to his strategy. Definitely virtual reality is paying off a lot, but without the tile auction, that would have been less the case. So you do have to wonder if the early patent lab could have been just pushing to faster upgrades, but it's fine. Quebec, looking to supplement his power a little. The power price is creeping up, was creeping up. That seemed reasonable. Part of why it's going back down is just the solar flare. But if Quebec's going to do this, I would have really preferred it to be next to his base. This is, what, 1.12? Okay. It would have been like 1 power per second next to his base, 1.1. I don't know. Either way, it's a minimal difference, and it's just so much easier to move in and out of those claims if they're next to your base. And one more thing you could have looked into was connecting up this water. Something I always like to emphasize, just if you can connect up your remote claims, that's almost always a good thing. Alright, another Pleasure Dome tile potentially coming down. See who picks it up. It can also very easily be an optimization center. Quebec picking up for 8K is really nice. I don't know what he's gonna go for on there, but it doesn't matter. Either one's a good choice. Optimization center. Going to work out quite nicely for him. He's going to win a lot of optimizations because that's what elites do. While all this was being talked about, Bob has been getting bought up by both of his opponents. And it looks like he's actually in danger of this majority buyout. In fact, he should just be getting bought out. Bit unfortunate for him. You always got to be careful about that. Just after, like right before you upgrade or anything, make sure you have enough money to defend yourself, or your opponents do not have enough money to buy you out. Otherwise, it just leaves yourself very vulnerable to this sort of situation, where you were in a good position and then that just evaporates. It happens. Yeah, at this point, Quebec Czech does just have a nice position. Actually building a second Pleasure Dome there, not optimization center, which is fine. Stock is relatively even between the two players, but Quebec does just have significant... Okay, I was gonna say significantly more optimizations, which is sort of true anyway, but he doesn't have a lot. He'll be popping them out a lot faster than Mr. Meltmus is, especially since Mr. Meltmus doesn't even have an optimization center down. So his prediction will just keep getting better and better. That edge will keep growing. The Pleasure Domes are already a pretty significant edge for Quebec, and debt is also a very significant edge. So it's going well, I guess debt isn't a significant edge anymore since both players are in a ton of it. But yeah, Quebec is definitely making more cash at the moment, whereas Multimus has a slight advantage in subsidiary income, but neither of the subsidiaries is looking to be too great. The other thing Mr. Multimus has going for him is these patents. He has a lot of patents. And that's also a very cheap claim. It is way across the map from everything. So if Mr. Multimus does go into that, it'll take a while to get online, but he does have teleportation, so it'll just be a little extra water. Which, you know, isn't super important right now, but it's fine. For 8k, you don't say no. Yeah, main thing I'm concerned about for Backcheck right now is that he just does not have any farms down. Unless he is planning for an off-world transition, it seems like the steel isn't super necessary anymore. So moving into farms, moving the iron into glass would all be very doable and make a significant amount of money. Off-world would not be a terrible idea. Oxygen launches are very strong, but it's just a ton of money to commit, especially when you're in such deep debt. I would be more concerned about making money very quickly and dealing with the situation. We'll see what direction he chooses to go. Yeah. Meanwhile, Mr. Meltmus just making piles of money on this food. In pretty good markets overall as well. So even though he doesn't have the research go along with everything, kind of been holding on. And at this point, has a slight edge in cash needed for the buyout. Bit ahead there. The longer things go, the more I would expect Quebec to catch up there. Okay, Bob moving into an off-world. The sub-AI Bob moving into the off-world here. It is going to be mostly split income, but it is 6-4, so Mr. Meltmus will be gaining a slight edge off of that. And that sub might end up being a pretty decent difference maker before too long. But yeah, still 60 seconds before the first launch, and then we'll see that start wrapping up. Quebec has managed to pay off enough debt to get out of his D rating. Does have a mutiny stored up. The off-world definitely is a potential target, probably not what you're looking for, since you already own 40% of that income. On the other hand, Mr. Miltmist hasn't moved into anything that would feel like a particularly strong alternative, so kind of sitting on it for the moment, which is fine. Mr. Meltimus, freezing the food definitely feels stronger than the slowdown strike, especially since slowdown strike isn't even cheaper than the power surge. With the spy down there, you know it's safe to power surge, it's more effective. No reason not to do it. Okay. Yep. Mr. Meltmus definitely with a solid lead right now. Only needing 400k to finish the buy versus 500 for Quebec. But again, still plenty of time for that gap to be closed. Though this food freeze is definitely not helping with that. Quebec might want to look into moving out of some of these chemicals soon. He has done a very effective job of crashing that price out. even with the full optimizations, they are reasonably profitable, but there's probably other markets you want to be in, like glass. Doing a real good job of keeping that food frozen. This food surplus, though, does hurt the play significantly. This dust storm means that Mr. Multimus isn't getting a ton out of his food. Retaliatory freeze during the dust storm is less good. It's more or less fine, it's not a big deal, but probably freezing like electronics or something would have been slightly more effective. A lot of power surges coming down now. Players noticing this stuff is real cheap. No reason not to use a lot of it. Okay, so Quebec did finally drop the mutiny onto that offworld, which is a totally reasonable play. Yeah, launching chems will do a lot. I should not be queuing up so many launches. Like on a mutiny, you will get only 2 launches off, so the 3rd launch is wasted. Like, just parking that money there isn't doing anything for you. Is my stream actually online still? I think so. But yeah. At this point, it all seems like too little too late. Mr. Meltimus just is making that much more money. Which is in a fair amount due to just like the iron and steel was down for a very long time, not making very much money. If there's no food down for a very long time, the chemicals were committed to very heavily for a very long time, which, you know, doesn't necessarily pay off all that well. Mr. Meltimus taking that, okay, Quebec taking it back again. All very reasonable plays. Even though the first mutiny was just kind of a marginal thing, the follow-up mutinies are taking a full off-world production away and giving it to you rather than the 60-40 thing. So it makes a lot more sense once the mutiny exchange has started happening. Chems are $5. That is why Quebec needed to move out of chems sooner. But it is what it is. Quebec did pay off a lot of debt trying to push this game just a little longer, try to get something done here. But yeah, losing out on the mutiny exchange, not surprising if you're up against Scavenger, and that is going to be just one less edge available for him to try to clean things up. Picking up the 30k mutiny. Well, again, be helpful. We'll get another launch off of that. But at this point, Mr. Meltimus is just there. Was just there before the 50k mutiny. But, I mean, this next launch will more than pay for that, so it's fine. And that'll get Mr. Meltimus to the threshold and get the buy, assuming he... Okay. Well done. There were definitely some doubts, some concerns towards the end there for Mr. Meltimus with not having any optimizations in, and with how high prices were sticking stubbornly. But he managed to pull it through. Just the back of good, consistent use of the black market and good production of his own.